What's up, Internet? My name is Michael Cook, this is Blue Giant Media, and we're here to connect through gaming. Today we've got Small World and the vast majority of its expansions by Philip Kayerts and published by Days of Wonder. We're going to take a quick overview of all the many different modules and components and expansions that I have. The only ones I don't have are Sky Islands and the River Worlds expansions. So I've got Realms, Tales and Legends, Power Pack 1 and 2, which encompasses all the many different small expansions that have come out through the years, as well as Necromancer's Island and a whole bunch of stuff. So we'll take a look at a quick overview of the rules. We'll come back and I'll let you know what I do like, what I don't like, and who may or may not like Small World. Alright, so here I've got a whole mess of stuff for Small World. Over here, I'll start just by saying, over here on the side, this is one of the things that you could do with Small World Realms. You can take these tiles and build your own areas. You can also follow some preset scenarios that walk you through a specific setup. You can even mix the regular Small World and Underground with tunnels moving from the top to the bottom. All that kind of stuff is totally viable with Small World Realms, which is pretty cool. With that said, I'm going to push this to the side. And let's move over to Small World. This is how we're going to set up for 2 players. You can take a upper and underground section, and we just folded the board in half and put it together. Each of these regions is considered complete. We've got, on this side, we've got some of the different monster tokens that replace the lost races. Each one of these, when conquered, will give you one of these special tokens that does all kinds of cool, either gives special abilities, or maybe a monster might show up that you can control, or gives you a place another way to score points. All kinds of interesting things can happen. I alluded over here to tunnels. That means that these 2 regions are connected, and these 2 regions are connected. And then over here we still just have the regular lost races from the base set. There's only 1 of them, whereas there's 2 for these monsters. Makes it a little bit harder to conquer. I've got all the extra race tokens and all that kind of good stuff over here, along with coins. I've got a die right here that we'll need, and everything's kind of pulled out. You're going to have 5 different sets of these available with a combination of a race and a power. I've already got all the tokens kind of set out for each of those, and then each player is going to get 5 coins to start the game. So we can say this player over here has got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Once you get them, you can turn them face down to keep them hidden from your opponents. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, 5 for this player. Then another thing that we've got right here, these are the cards for Small World Tales and Legends. There's a bunch of different, I think 6 different preset kind of themed decks of 9 cards. You're going to use 1 less card than there are the number of rounds. You could also, each of these are also set in kind of like a simple, somewhat medium, and crazy change to the game. You could take all the ones that are major changes, you could take all the ones that are minor changes, you could take all the ones that are medium changes, shuffle them together, or you could take a preset deck. Anyway, what you're going to do, since there's 1 less than the number of rounds, for the first round 1 isn't in play, there's just 1 that's showing what's going to come into play in the next round. So, for instance, this one says, starting with the first player, each player throws a victory coin into the lake until one of the players refuses or can no longer afford to pay. This player collects all of the victory coins thrown in the lake, but also must immediately discard all of his in decline tokens from the map. So that's pretty interesting. Basically a game of chicken on the lake. You gotta throw coins in the lake until you say, I quit, and then everybody, then you get to take those coins, but you have to get rid of all of your race tokens that are currently in decline. Which means in the first round, it's not going to make that big of a difference. But there's also, let's see, what are some of the other ones? This one says, at the end of this turn, each player must discard 2 active race tokens in the region of his choice. Players occupying 1 farmland with their active race tokens only lose a single token. Players occupying 2 or more farmlands with their active race lose none. So it's famine. You basically now at the end of the round you're going to want to control some farmlands. Otherwise you're going to lose tokens. So they do a lot of interesting things. Let's go ahead and see for next round. Cthulhu for president. Each swamp occupied is worth 1 additional victory coin this turn. That will be what takes effect in round 2. Then, starting with, let's just say this is the first player, they're going to choose their first race. When you choose a race, you can either take the one that's right here, or you can put down a coin to pass to get the one that you want, whichever one that is. Let's say that I'm just going to go ahead and take the Muddy Igors because they look pretty good. I'll explain a little bit of what they do. Then the next one is going to come out. And I would go through and grab that stuff to get it ready. Or you could leave it all in the trays and grab them when the time comes. So then what they're going to do is begin Conquest. So I have 4 plus 3, I only have 7 of these tokens. But my special power for my race is for every 2 that are conquered by the beginning of my next turn, I get to add more into play because it's 2 players. If there are 3, for every 3 tokens taken off the board, then I would get 1 for every 3. Also, I'm going to get an extra point for each mud region, which are these right here that I have conquered. So I'm going to choose to start over here. And I think I am going to start by taking this region right here. So to start, you start at the edge of the board. Over here you start from the water as if you would arrive by ship. And over here you just start from an edge of the board. Or I guess I should say the water is not on the edge of the board, so you can reach in. You can just conquer from any space on the edge into any space that is bordering the edge of the board or bordering the water. So to conquer a space, it always takes 2 tokens plus 1 for each token or defense token or mountain that are there. So it's going to take 4 for me to conquer this region right here. So I'll take that one, and these I will set aside to give me new Igors next turn. Then to conquer here, we'll take 2 also. Then, in order to conquer another, I'm going to have to roll a die because I have to have at least 2. Well, I only have 1, so this is the only time that you actually roll a die. Let's say I wanted to conquer, let's see, this region right here. So I roll. That means I get to add 1 to my army strength. That means I have a total strength of 2, essentially, which is enough to take that region. If I had rolled that, I wouldn't have conquered. If I had rolled 2 or 3, then I definitely would have been good. So I had a 50-50 chance. Then, for the end of my turn, I get to have 1 coin for each region I occupy, and then factoring in any special powers or trait abilities. So I would get, in this case, 1, 2, 3, 4, because I'm muddy, 5 coins. So I'd go ahead and grab 5 and add that to my total. Next player would do the same, except for when I conquered that region which had a monster in it, I will get to take one of these. It should happen immediately, but I'll go ahead and take one and flip it over, and then I will consult to see what it does. So right here I have the Fountain of Youth, and it says, at the start of their turn, the player whose troops occupy the Fountain of Youth's region receives 1 bonus race token, provided there's at least 1 left in the tray. Then to end my turn, I can also choose to redistribute my army. So I could go ahead and put that there if I wanted to, although I think I'm going to definitely protect that one right there. Okay, so then it'd come over to the next player, and we'll just go ahead and keep it easy and say they're going to take the Lava Orcs. The ability for the Orcs is whenever they conquer a region that has somebody in it, then they get a bonus point. So I could take these guys right here. They want to conquer areas with people in them. So let's start. Let's go ahead and start over here. So we'll go to there. Actually, no, we can start at the edge of the board. Let's go ahead and do that. So we'll go 1, 2, 3, which is going to put that over there. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. And then we'll roll a die for... Well, let's go ahead and try and get adjacent. There. Alright, so we're going to score 1, 2 because it was occupied. 3, 4 because that was occupied. 5, 6 because that was occupied. 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Alright. Now, the lava power says that if we had conquered a region that has... If we occupied a region that has a mountain, then what we could do is, for free, just put a token on a space. Like if we had, for instance, conquered this space here, we could have just put, I guess maybe that would have been smart. We could have put a token here, and that would have instantly killed all these people, although when you kill somebody, normally you only lose one actual race token. The rest get given back to redistribute at the beginning of the next turn. But if the lava happens, then they all get to come back. And then at the beginning of the next turn, it would go away, and I would have the ability to enter that region at a discount, basically, because I wouldn't have to conquer it. So it's a good way to get people out of your way, or to dislodge something. But I don't have any mountains conquered, so I don't get to use my lava. So I'll go ahead and take my 5, 6, 7 coins. Then at the beginning of this player's turn, we had 5 tokens removed from the board, which means we get to add 2 new Igors, which becomes 3 because I have the Fountain of Youth. So I get to add those. I'll go ahead and put these back there and there. And we'll go ahead and collect all but 1 from each of these regions, and now we get to move into conquest again. So at this point, if I wanted, I could come up here and go 1, 2, 3 to remove this one of my enemy tokens from the board. Then, let's see, I could go 1, 2 right there, and maybe I'd have to roll a 3 on the die to conquer there because there's 1, 2 monsters and a mountain, so 3 extra defense. That's not going to happen. So I'll go ahead and just try and conquer this mountain here. And I failed because it would have taken 3, so 2 plus 0 is not 3. So now I take what's left and I get to redistribute. So I will go ahead and take all of these. I'm pretty sure, let's see, in order for this guy to get to me, he'd have to go conquer there, conquer there, conquer there to get to me there. I feel pretty safe, so I'm just going to go ahead and stack right here to protect myself on that end. Then it would come over to this player, they would collect and move on to their next conquest with what they have left. Or, and this is a bad time to do it, so don't take this as a strategic advice, or they could collect all but 1 from each of these and flip those tokens over, putting your race into decline, which when that happens, you flip this over to see if there's any remaining abilities. There aren't any remaining abilities for these guys, so you just hang on to the race so that you can remember whose is whose, and then you end your turn, still scoring points for each of the regions that you occupy, but you no longer have special powers, so I'm just going to score 3 points. But what that allows me to do is at the beginning of my next turn, I could then take a new race, leaving them on the board, and kind of conquer anew. Now it would be a really bad time because then it would come to this player's turn, they'd get to turn, they'd get to turn these 2 in, plus get the Fountain of Youth to stack up 2 more Igors, which at this point, that's pretty impressive to have the army just continue growing like that. The Igors can be pretty useful. And, oh, I didn't give myself the points for over there. This would have been 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points for this player. And I did not factor, and I didn't factor this in, which means I would have, because they were swamps, I would have gotten an extra couple points for that as well. So as you can see, there a lot of things come into play once you start playing with these, and especially when you're trying to play for 2 separate people. But I think that gives you a pretty good idea of what these tokens can do. They do all kinds of interesting things. I know one of them like summons a Balrog. One of them makes it so, this one makes it so you can fly across the map. All kinds of interesting things. This one makes it so the swamp regions are connected, which matters more when this board is folded out. So it does all kinds of interesting things like that. If you want, you can sub these in. If you like these a lot, you can go ahead and put those there, and then just set the game up with 2 lost race tokens on top of them, or 2 monsters, intermix them. There's a whole bunch of these, tons of races. Then you've got your variable board set up, and there's scenarios which might tell you that you can't. I know they do all kinds of things where you have to. I'll explain one other thing, I guess. When you move through rivers, so let's say this player comes back to their turn, they can choose to, whenever you enter the river, you drop 1, and then you can move to the next space, 1, and that gets me over here. And I can do 2 there, 2 there, and then try to move up this tunnel. Then at the end of my turn, these guys right here, they get redistributed. So they don't stay in the river. You can move through it quickly, but then you got to get out of the river. And I think that's pretty much everything, so let's go up top. Alright, so now that you have a pretty good idea of how to play through Small World and a whole bunch of its different modules, I want to let you know some of my favorite things about Small World and some of the different expansions. So Small World, in my opinion, I like to tell people it fixes Risk. Because my least favorite thing about Risk is, well, dice hate me. So I hate when I roll the dice and I might have a bigger army than you, but I just keep rolling terribly, so you still, despite insurmountable odds, defeat me, because that always happens to me. That doesn't happen in Small World. You're only going to roll the die at most once every round. And I really like that, because it takes a lot of the luck out and just makes it more of, I don't know, it's a little bit more strategic, I guess. The other really fun thing for me is the ebb and flow, the tug of war. You're not trying to conquer the entire world, so you don't have to necessarily crush everybody. You're just trying to control as much of the world as you can on any given turn. And that, I think, takes a lot of the pressure off of feeling like, oh man, I don't want to be mean. It's like, what's it gonna matter? You're gonna push right back on your turn. If I take over this area that you put 5 guys on, you're not losing all 5 of them. You're only losing 1 of them. And then you're going to get to redeploy all of the rest of the 4 and then come back and push me right out of there. So it takes a lot of the take that element, which I'm usually not a big fan of, it takes it out of the equation. The other phenomenal thing that I love that gives it so much more is the replay value that you get with all the different expansions added in. I love the millions of combinations of different races and traits, and those different powers that can come into play. It's so fun to see. I guess I'll get into that later. I love seeing what comes up every round, and sometimes you're like, oh, well, this is a great combination. Sometimes this is a terrible combination. Everybody has to keep passing on until maybe you get towards the end of the game, and then you want to take that because you're only going to have another turn or 2, and it's worth all those coins that are stacked up on top of it. So that is great. Big fan of that. The Underworld expansion, I think, did a phenomenal job of adding some little tweaks without making too big a difference. I really like the places of power and the different relics that come into play. I think that they mix the game up. They make it so certain areas are more desirable. So rather than just a plain push back and forth tug of war, now you actually have a reason to choose specific areas that you want to try and control, rather than just control as much as you can. Although every race and trait can possibly give you a reason to control different areas. But now there's a common area that most everybody is going to kind of want, a little bit like a King of the Hill situation. And again, more replayability. As far as the different expansions, Power Pack 1 and 2, so I came to the game much later for Small World. I played it a long time ago. Particular game group that I played with at the time, I knew it just was not going to hit the table because it was still too confrontational for them. So I didn't really play it, and I kind of just went along with them and said, okay, I guess I don't like confrontational games either, which I still don't that much, but where I am now, I'm much more okay with confrontational games. So then all the replay value and the, oh, you like Risk? Well, let me try and get you into the hobby. That kind of factor for Small World appealed to me immensely. That said, between Power Pack 1 and 2, it's hard for me to say which one I like better because I just want all the replay value. I want all those different races. So honestly, you're going to have to kind of look and see what's in play for you. But for me, I think that they are both no-brainers if you haven't already purchased some of the small expansions already. If you've already purchased the small expansions, obviously you're going to get overlap. If you buy a power pack, you're just going to need to single out the small expansions that you have left. But it's much more economically viable to get power pack 1 and 2 rather than buy all the other small bits. So I highly endorse, if you like Small World and haven't already gotten a bunch of the small expansion modules, go ahead and get the power packs, because you're going to fill out the collection for much cheaper. Now, Tales and Realms, or Tales and Legends and Realms. I am so disappointed that they aren't still in print, because they're some of the best things about Small World. The Tales and Legends are awesome. Now every round, now you've got different rules that get thrown on top of it. It alters your strategy, your style of play from one round to the next. I really like, oh, this round, okay, well, that means that I really need to try and push here, or I need to avoid doing this. That just gives so much more to the game. Now, some people might say that it swings back and forth too much, because maybe there's a card that gets turned over and it completely negates your special power or something like that. That can be frustrating. But for me, I just really, really appreciate the variability that now we get within the game, not just from game to game to game. So, really big fan. It's a cheap expansion when it's available, and I don't know why they don't just keep printing it, because it's a pack of cards. So, Days of Wonder, reprint it. Realms is great because now you've got even more variability in the maps. Now I've got Small World with its 2 to 3 player, 4 to 5 player, 4 to 5 player maps. Same thing with Underworld. Now I've got Realms, so I can kind of make my own maps, as well as I haven't barely scratched the surface of all the different scenarios. So the scenarios can be really cool because, again, it's another way to mix up the rules, mix up the goal of the game. Maybe you're going to want to do this instead of that. It pushes you in a new direction, and that is one of the best things about it for me. When you come into it, well, normally I do this, but now I gotta try this because that looks like it's gonna be more beneficial given this scenario. Necromancer Island. That really throws things out, because now that Necromancer, they want carnage to happen so that they can kind of take over. Alright, there's a lot of things I like about the game. So let's move on to the things that I don't like about the game. Things that I don't like about the game most are that there are just some combinations of races and traits that tend to not work together. The Cursed expansion, I haven't thrown out, but I'm never going to play with the Cursed thing. It's terrible because it's literally going to just sit there blocking things until the end of the game, when someone might go, well, I guess I'll take it just because it's my last turn. And it's just terrible. The other thing that bugs me is I really wish you got to see more of the possibilities. You only get to see 5, and depending on how many times you go into Decline, you're only going to get to see, like, at most, like 15 or so different of those combinations. So I don't know, maybe you could house rule it to where you put like a ton of those things out there, and you can put down 15, although that would be really pointless. But I don't know, I wish that there was a way to see more options, because I love that part of the game. Thing that I don't also like about the game, and this is tough because it's tied to one of the things that I didn't mention, but I do really like about the game, is it is difficult to time going into Decline. But at the same time, that is crucial, and that puzzle is interesting. And I love the fact that you do go into Decline, so you get a chance to see different races throughout the game, different combinations throughout the game. You're forced to play with a couple different ones. Outside of very, very rare circumstances, you cannot play with one throughout the whole game. It's never going to be a viable strategy, even in those rare instances where you have traits that allow you to never die. It's just not worth it. It's much more useful to get more people out there so that you can take over larger groups of land. So that's pretty much my complaint. Oh, and there is a collector's edition, but I really wish that there was some kind of a big box. I've been fortunate. I managed to cram everything that I have into 2 of these boxes, the base set and the Underworld expansion. Took the inserts out, had to kind of position things in there. It works, but it's packed to the brim already. So it'd be nice if there was kind of a big box solution. Now, who's gonna like this game? If you like Risk, I think this is better. So I know that I kind of led with that, but it fixes Risk. If you don't like roll to resolve, like, oh, I'm gonna try and do this. Well, let's roll to see if it happened. No, it didn't. That sucks. If you're like me in that boat, then this is going to make a big improvement on you from a game like Risk. Also, it doesn't take forever. So if you like that kind of area control, tug of war type game, and you don't want it to take 3 hours, this takes an hour, 90 minutes if you got a bunch of people. So I think that's great. Other people who like this game, fans of replayability. If you like to have lots of different variety, if you love to see all these different combinations, I think you're going to enjoy this game quite a bit because there's pretty much no end to it. People who will not like this game. These days, there's a big push for miniatures. There's no miniatures here. You got this push and pull, but on the table, it does not look epic. You just see this big stack or pile or arrangement of cardboard tokens. And it looks bland. Even though the art is nice on each of those, there's different art, it's not exciting on the table. Doesn't bother me, but that might be a factor for some people. If you don't like a game some people just feel like it's, oh, I took this, you took it back. I took this, you took it back. Boring. I don't feel that, but I guess people say that a lot, especially for 2 players. I think that the Underground expansion is much better if you're going to just choose 2 players, because now the places of power factor in a lot more. And I think that then, like the Tales and Legends, that becomes even more essential because it keeps things interesting and changes what you're going for, rather than just, I take this, you take it back. Now it's, well, this round I'm going to take this. And then next round, oh, well, I don't need that anymore. I need to go here. So it forces you to kind of change up round to round. But then again, that expansion is really hard to come by. So you may want, I don't know, if you're only going to play 2 players and you don't have those at your disposal and you are put off by the possibility of it turning into somewhat of a just simple tug of war rather than a struggle for power, then this might not appeal to you. Also, if you're a completionist and you do not look forward to the difficulty of having to find and buy all these things, you don't want to get your toes wet, because then you're going to want to get them all, like I pretty much did. So anyway, that's pretty much what I have, so let's go ahead and go back up top. Alright, so let's go ahead and take the spotlight off of Small World and its many expansions. If you want to know more about the game, please let me know in the comment section below if you have any questions, any requests, any corrections, any of that kind of stuff. And you can also take a look in the description section where you can find a link to some unboxings, some setup and gameplay of Small World and some of the expansion components. You can also find a link there to MacroNovaGames.com where you can buy Small World, a bunch of its expansions, and a whole bunch of other great stuff. And until next time, I want to thank you so much for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe if you like what you see, and have a wonderful day.